Now, you're seeing here, like, we're having varying success. Some of you guys are getting perfect selections. Some of you are getting kind of clunky selections. So we do have, and these are hard to use, and these take time. These are probably the most frustrating selection tools in Photoshop, but they are also some of the most powerful because it gives us the ability to make very precise custom selections. And that's the lasso tools. The lasso tools are essentially tools that we are drawing a selection. Okay, they're great, but the learning curve is steep. All right, so there's 3 different flavors of the lasso tool. We have the classic lasso tool that basically is you are drawing. This is the one I probably use least because it's really difficult to use. You saw there, Nicole clicked, she drug, and then when she let go, the computer gave her a selection in the shape of the line she drew. That is the basic lasso tool functionality. And it's helpful sometimes. I find it helpful, like I didn't want to go into it at that moment, but Amy had a little bit of, just a tiny little bit of something on her 5 that she wanted to get off of. Where I will use the lasso tool itself is when I'm subtracting from a selection. When I just want to like get in and just like cut out a little tiny area. That's where I use the regular lasso tool most, okay? But it's actually difficult, really difficult to make a meaningful selection just with the lasso tool because it's so hard to use. But again, it's good for subtracting, cleaning things up. We can use any of these tools in conjunction, but we also have the magnetic lasso tool and the polygonal lasso tool. Let's use the polygonal lasso tool first. This one is basically we click and create points. I click, it creates a point. I move my mouse, and basically I click again, it makes another point, so I can make a polygon, okay? But I can make much more than a polygon. What Nicole is going to do here is we're going to deselect, and she's going to zoom really tight in on this pen. And she's going to make a really intricate polygon where she's just basically going to go and click all the way around this. See how she's just making little points, clicking as she goes? You can just basically go on the outside of an object, nice and slow, just clicking each individual time until you have the selection that you want. And you can see here, even though you're not really getting curves, if you work in tight enough, she can make a really clean selection. Now, this is where it's really handy to start to get shortcut keys. This is why knowing that the space bar gets you the hand tool is so important, because she's so tight in there that she doesn't want to move away from the tool to scroll. Okay, so using that space bar for the hand tool to scroll is really handy. This is a tough one, and I do not expect that you guys are going to have as much success with this. This tool takes practice. Nicole's done this. So, you know, she knows how it works, but she's been through the frustration of using the tool for the first time. And it will be frustrating at first. You're going to be very upset because it's not going, it takes practice.
Is there a shortcut?
Command D. Command D. Ooh, and actually, let's see something. So one thing about this tool though is we can backspace on this, right? With this one, or is that just the magnetic?
I think that's
No.
just the magnetic.
Hit backspace.
No, it isn't. Yeah, I have backspace.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
If you mess up, so Nicole is she's gonna on purpose come over here and screw up. If she hits the backspace key, it removes the last selection. That does make this a lot easier.
Now, I click here.
Okay, deselect first and start with a new fresh selection because you still have your object selection made.
Where's
Command
my
D, or Control D, excuse me.
Control D?
Yep, deselect.
Okay. And that took the whole thing off.
Now you just start clicking and you're just gonna create a line, a polygon. Just try to get as close to the pen as you can. Now, I don't want you guys to hold yourself to what Nicole is doing because really, I'm not kidding. This takes practice and can be frustrating. She's gonna get a pretty clean, nice selection here. You can see she's done now. And if she copies and pastes that, it's gonna look pretty darn nice. But it's not, she's coming from a place of she has used this tool before many times. All right, so the last selection tool we want to go over is a tool called the magnetic lasso tool. This tool is a little bit tricky, and typically you're going to have to use it in conjunction with, you're going to have to clean it up. It's not perfect, but it is actually kind of a hybrid tool. Some of our tools are hybrid tools. And what I mean by hybrid tool is some of our tools, it's tool-based selection, like the polygonal lasso tool. I click, 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 I complete, it makes a selection. And then we have color-based selection, like the magic wand. I click and it searches for contrast to a certain tolerance, and then it just automatically makes a selection. The magnetic lasso tool is a combination of the two. I click, I drag, I can click and drop points just like with the polygonal lasso tool, but the magnetic functionality is it is going to try to search for contrast to snap to, okay? So Nicole is going to zoom in on the lock. So Control plus, space bar to click and drag. And now with the magnetic lasso tool, she's going to click on the edge of the lock. And now that has started that process, okay? It is now trying to create a path. And she's going to slowly drag along, and you can see it's finding the edge, the contrast, and it's dropping points as it thinks that it has created an appropriate path. Not perfect by any stretch of the imagination.
And I'm not
But
clicking on anything at
She
this
hasn't
point.
yet. She hasn't yet. But if she finds the tool is not finding the edge, it's too complex, you can click to drop your own points. Okay, so as she gets around this edge here, she may find that she needs to help the tool out a little bit. But it's pretty good at, helping out with that selection. So she's just going to kind of continue to drag around, let it try to find its way, help it out by dropping a little click point here and there where she feels she needs to. And then when she gets all the way around the lock, when she gets to the other side, she will then click on the first point to complete the selection, and it will give us the marching ants. So hybrid tool. It's her interaction with the software as well as some programming in the software that is telling the software to search for a certain amount of contrast. Just kind of watch her go through it, or if you're ready, if you're ready to dive in, make sure you're on the background layer.
I want to finish the pen here first.
Okay, that's cool. There's the pen.
I've got it selected.
Okay. Then
It,
Control C, Control V.
I did that.
Okay.
Let's see, do I need to press enter?
You should, I'm not sure that you're on the right layer. Did you
That's
actually get it
okay.
pasted
I'm supposed to be where?
on the background layer? Because those pixels are on the background layer.
Well, remember, when you paste it, it's gonna paste it right on top of the original.
Mm-hmm. So
Okay.
Control C, Control V.
Still selected, and I still got.
Hang on a second, let me come around there. So it doesn't look like something's going like it's supposed to.
Maybe I did it on the wrong layer, so now I can't.
When you get back to your final point, you'll notice that next to your magnetic little lasso tool, it will have a little circle. That means that you will be closing your selection. You are on the original point and will be closing the loop per se. And then just click on that, and now you have your marching ants to indicate your selection.
So I wanted to point out something. So Carol was zoomed in and she was having a hard time. Like she was moving around and she couldn't find exactly where she was. There is a panel called the Navigator. And the Navigator panel, you see I have a little thumbnail of the entire image. And then there's a little red box down here. So the Navigator, basically, if you're zoomed in like this, shows you where you are zoomed in. So if you're working incredibly magnified and you need, and you would find it helpful to be able to see everything, but also know where you're at, you can use the Navigator to do that. It's under Window. Any panel in Photoshop is under Window, and then you're looking for Navigator. That's sometimes a handy panel to use.
Are you able to move that navigator window?
Yeah, you can move it, you can resize it. So,
And now
I mean, remember, our panels are incredibly customizable. So like I moved the Navigator out, I made it larger. I can put it over on this second monitor so that as I'm working very tightly, oh, sorry, you can see the second monitor. So if you have two monitors and you're working on something a little more complex, maybe you want to have your Navigator over here on your right-hand monitor so that you can easily move back forth. And then actually one of the cool things about that Navigator, check that out. I can also, using the Navigator, actually move around the image. That's another way for us to pan around the image.
So the Navigator, you don't have it automatically up.
So that can when you're doing like higher detail work, the Navigator can be helpful. David just asked a good question. So he wanted to mirror it, is what he's saying. So we've looked at transform commands very, very simply so far. So let's say when I press Control C, Control V with this lock that Nicole has created here. And now I'm going to come up into the middle of this up here. I'm going to move that layer up so that you can see it. So he's saying, what if I wanted to mirror it? So so far we've shown you one transform command, and that is this free transform, and we've used it very simply. But we actually have
all kinds of transform commands. So if we go up to edit, this is the free transform I've been having you guys use. But and that one's really great. You can do all kinds of things with it. But we also have scale, rotate, skew, distort, perspective, warp, rotate 180, rotate 90, flip horizontal, flip vertical. Lots of different options here. So if we just wanted to flip it, I think that's a flip vertical. Nope. I always mix those up. Transform. There we go. But actually, one of the reasons why I use free transform so much is because with free transform, in addition to sizing things, I can rotate things, I can flip things around. I mean, it's really easy. And it's just, you have to know the command keys. So like the free transform, once you understand how some of these things work, is the easiest one to use. But until you have developed that comfort level with it, you may want to, use some of those other transform commands. And there's all kinds of fun stuff you can do, like, I don't know what I would warp with this. But you can perspective warp things. Like, let's say for whatever reason, I actually did want to warp this book label. Go to edit, warp, and now you can see here there's all kinds of, now we have all these different nodes that we can use. So it's really, like we said at the very beginning, we're just trying to help you guys develop a foundation. This software is vast. And then of course, if I enter, I don't want to have a Salvador Dali book. Not that I have anything, I've been to the Salvador Dali Museum in St. Petersburg. Not saying anything bad about it, I just don't want to go with that particular look here today. How are we doing? So it's important to note that as you go, like on this file here, if we save it, there's only certain file formats that are going to retain the layer information. So if I want to save this file with all of that information existing so that it remains editable, I have to make sure that when I save, it actually saves as a PSD file. So if you started out with a JPEG and you go to save as a JPEG, it's either going to prompt you to save as a PSD, or if you insist to save it as a JPEG, it's actually going to flatten the information into one layer, and because JPEGs cannot have layers. Okay, so if you want to retain that flexibility, it actually has to be some sort of layered file format. PSD makes the most sense. Okay.
How are we going to send that to somebody? We have to send it in a JPEG.
Yes. No, yeah. Again, very good point, Amy. Like we talked about with the differences between JPEG and RAW file formats, you can't really share a RAW file format with anyone in a meaningful way that they could do much with it, the average person anyway. Same thing with a PSD. I mean, you can send a PSD to someone who knows Photoshop, who is a professional, and they could use that. But the average person, they're not even going to be able to open it. They can't put it into another document. You can't put a PSD into a PowerPoint. You can put it into an InDesign document, but you can't put it in a PowerPoint. You can't put it in a Word document. You can't put it on a website. You can't post it to Facebook. You can't send it to Walmart to get printed. Any of that. Okay. So in those cases, you definitely would want to save it as a JPEG. Okay.
How also do you clean, like now that we've moved all this, how do we clean all that out? Or do you just crop it out?
Actually cropping. Thank you, because I almost forgot again. All right, so let's actually do that really fast here. So let's say I'm going to move some stuff around just a little bit more.
I'm gonna move this 5 up here. I'm gonna move this, the pen up here. Actually, I'm gonna put it behind the 5. I'm gonna grab the globes and move them. Oh,
So he's
Or
gonna try
all
to
of
crop
those.
everything out, Amy, but let's say you had an ongoing project. And all of those were just like in the way, distracting, you weren't ready to finalize and crop anything yet. Just click on the eye that's on each layer to the left of the layer image, and it'll make them go away so you can't see them.
oh, I thought she was asking about cropping. Did I
No,
misunderstand?
I think, well, cropping is good,
No, because when you do the eye, it takes it out of the picture too.
right? So you did that 5, that's up on your book, but if, let's say you wanted that 5 that's in your lower right corner to just go away because it's distracting you, you can click on the, it will be the background, because all of those extra elements are on the background.
But that takes the book too.
Oh, yes, it does. Because you didn't copy and paste the book. So if you wanted to, you could create a new layer with the book on it. And then that way, if you wanted to change the color of the book or anything, do an edit, that would be an extra step. But like what Jay's gonna show you is he's arranging everything accordingly so that he can crop everything else out.
Okay, so the crop tool is very simple. I click on it, you can see I now have these handles on the edges that represent the crop, and I just simply click and drag accordingly. So when I'm ready to be done with this file, I would just simply crop out the information I no longer want. Now you can complete it either by pressing enter, and we also have a little check mark up here at the top. There we go. So now I've cleaned out all the other information because I've done everything I want to do with this particular illustration.
If we, instead of cropping, we want to get rid of everything, we hide everything, we hide everything except the background, but how do we put in a new background that isn't transparent?
Oh, yeah. Oh, so if, say, the book was actually separate and we wanted to, we essentially want this image, but we don't want, so the checkerboard represents transparent information. Okay, now there's a couple of different ways to do this. One, I could flatten this image right now, and that would give me it would turn everything into a background layer, and all the transparent information would go to my background color. So in this case, I think it actually would go white, but I don't want that. Or no, I'm sorry, black, because that's, no, do I? No, yeah, it would actually go black, sorry. But you also, and this is something I do oftentimes, just so I can see what it looks like. And then, you know, I don't have to guess. It also helps me see edges. You can also just create a new layer. Like I can create a new layer, drag that one. Okay, I gotta use the mouse. Drag that layer to the bottom, and then I can fill this layer with whatever color I want. So, and the easiest way to do that is the little paint bucket tool right here. So I can select that paint bucket tool, and I click in here. What in the world? Apparently, I'm struggling with, there we go. So I just clicked with the paint bucket tool onto that new layer that I've created. It fills with white, and now I can see what that looks like without having to flatten it.
And you can put any color that you want in there. It doesn't have to be white or black.
Yeah, it could be.
It could be blue if you want it, but then you're not gonna see your 5.
Yeah, like I could actually, there we go, now it's working. Now it's not working. So take that bucket tool, just kind of drops whatever color. That's hideous.